It kind of always have been. Our mother, I was the youngest of three, gave us a budget that we had to write, and I was 10 when I wrote my first one. So I wrote into my budget haircuts, and then asked after getting my budget approved if I could buy clippers to shave my head and still get that money. And my mom said yes. I think that was maybe not entrepreneur, but at least entrepreneurial. And then kind of ever since then, it's always been, I've liked to make money and do things, whether kind of the classic, whatever, selling stuff at the pool, or I was really into disc golf. So I at one point was swimming in these ponds to find all the wet frisbees that people had lost and selling those on eBay. It's kind of always been something. But in earnest, I guess, starting King of Pops in 2010, for me, my nudge was getting laid off. So whereas I always kind of thought about it and was always doing little side hustles, it took that nudge for me to actually commit full time, which I'm really grateful for. Yes, I got laid off in the fall of 2009, and I knew I wanted to start a popsicle business, and I knew that winter was probably not the ideal time to start. So I set a personal deadline of April 1st to sell my first pops. And so I took that whole period, which was basically 6 or so months. I had some savings. I moved out of the condo that I had purchased. I rented it out and moved onto my brother's couch until I got a room. Eventually, one of his roommates moved out. So just kind of reduced my expenses and went full time into planning, which I'm glad we had that much time, but I'm also really grateful that I did set a deadline, because I've seen in our projects and other people that are trying to do it, the pursuit of perfection can certainly, when you're first doing something, be a unconscious way to stall. Yeah, so King of Pops is a all natural, kind of zany, high quality popsicle company. We started on a street corner selling out of push carts that are kind of the classic type that you see in a lot of Latin America. And that's actually where we were inspired by the business. So we sold push carts, and then the business just kind of evolved. So that's still the core piece of it. But the buyer for Whole Foods came up one day and asked if we sell wholesale, and we didn't, but I was like, yeah, we sell wholesale. So he's like, well, I'd love to chat with you more about it. And so now we're in Whole Foods for South and Mid-Atlantic. We do a lot of catering, so everything from like weddings to large corporate gatherings. So those are kind of the three tiers of our business, all with one like very simple product. And we've done a good job of, on that side of the business, really sticking to our niche. And then on the other side, which we've gotten ourselves into some trouble, or maybe it's been good, we've done all kinds of different businesses. So for example, in the winters, we sell Christmas trees because we've got pickup trucks and a kind of an idle staff. So we deliver Christmas trees as elves. We started a local distribution company because we were driving our pops to all these stores in the South, and popsicles don't take up a whole lot of space on a truck, so we had plenty of space. We started a farm because we were dealing with all of these local farmers and wanted to get a better understanding of how they were doing it, and also grow some of the things that might not have made as much sense for them to build their farms around. So the core business of King of Pops has stayed really kind of true to its roots. And then we've had a lot of fun, probably less success from a profitability standpoint, but there's all these ancillary benefits. So like the farm is great for marketing. The distribution company is great, like to kind of we've got a much better relationship with Whole Foods because we're constantly bringing them new brands. And Tree helps people just think that's cute. So my state of mind was, I was excited about it and knew that it was going to be a big challenge and it was something that I wanted to try. But I also am blessed that I've got just a great family. And if things went terrible, um, I wasn't investing a whole lot of money in it. And I was in insurance before I got laid off, and I didn't feel like the insurance industry was going anywhere. If I wanted to go back to it, I probably could. So I felt scared, and I was probably really worried about a lot of the wrong things. I was most worried about red tape and C corps and things like that, which, I mean, you have to do, but those were the things that I think I spent more mental energy on, rather than if I was to do it again today, like thinking about what's the goal or the purpose, or what are we trying to accomplish. But I think I was just excited. I was proud. I mean, I was 25. It was fun to tell people I was starting a popsicle company, and usually they kind of chuckled and thought it was a bad idea. But it was fun. It was fun to talk and dream about it, but anxious as well. I just asked a lot for help, and that continues to be a big piece of our business where um, we don't need to have a coat of armor that we know everything. So asked people that were doing it and hoped they would give me good advice. So that was a big piece of it. And then in really the businesses that I was frequenting and the people that I knew were independent businesses, and they were familiar with me, it was really easy to go up to them and say like, hey, I know you're a yoga studio, but what do you know about getting a business license? And that was super helpful. If they didn't have an answer, they could usually connect you with somebody. Food truck vending in Atlanta pretty much didn't exist in 2010. It was a positive. It was a negative at the time because there wasn't just an easy form to fill out. But the positive was that I got to be in rooms with our city council members and be on like kind of considered the forefront of this thing that like if it had just existed would have had a lot less of an opportunity to influence. So I think the biggest fear is just failure. And for me, I knew logically that I was going to be okay even if I failed, but I just didn't want to fail in a way that was bad. So like for us, like food can get people sick. That's a scary thing. That's an intimidating thing that you need to learn a lot about and take seriously. I mean, in the first months, it was only me. And I had just a lot of family and friends that thought it was fun to come and blend fruit at 7 p.m. or whatever. And then by the second year, we hired 2 people. And then at that point, the biggest fear after you start to kind of, and I still do. I mean, it's just like, it's all a imposter syndrome thing a little bit. Like there's really nothing that I know differently than the majority of the employees here. But somehow I'm in this position, and it's a big responsibility to not be careless with that. I didn't really feel like it that much with my brother. He joined the company. He quit his job as a lawyer. 2 months in, I asked him, said, hey, I'm gonna have to hire somebody, or you can be a 50-50 partner. Because he'd been helping me and we've been dreaming all this stuff up together. He had just finished his law degree and had a job as a lawyer. So he keeps the note that my dad wrote him about, please don't go leave your law job to join your brother, which might have been good advice in some perspectives, but we always joke about it as a family now. So, well, I'm lucky in that I've got a partner. So a lot of people don't have, and there's a lot of disadvantages, I think, to having just a 50-50 partner. It's like says not to do it in basically like every business book, I think. But I've got that, whereas like we can talk just about everything endlessly. So I don't ever feel like I'm alone on anything, and that's super nice. And then I mean, I've gotten more confident, and just I do believe, where in the same token that I don't think that like I know any like special magic tricks that's going to make sure we never go out of business. I mean, especially in 2020, it was, I think everyone in the world saw that a little bit, is like the best plans you could have possibly had couldn't have prepared you. So it's just, and that's an extreme example of really every day. I mean, there's things that could happen any day that are beyond your control that could derail your plans. I also believe that I do have something to add, and that we have cultivated a powerful culture, and I think I'm good at kind of incubating and growing that. The first day I sold, I remember I'd made the pop. We had it in clear wrappers. It was sealed, hand sealed. I hand it to them, and you kind of play it cool, like you've done that thousands of times. And they're maybe like 15 feet away, eating it kind of on a bench or something. You're pretending like you're not looking at them, and oh man, they ate half of it at least. That's good. They at least aren't disgusted by it, and they're like, oh yes, they finished it. And that feeling, to be 100% honest, has not completely gone away. We've got a flavor, chocolate sea salt, that is our best seller, and it's probably 50% of our sales on oftentimes. And I still feel like anxious when somebody is trying, like, oh, what if they don't like it? Um, so I don't think that part ever really goes away. And I think that's a good thing. I think you want people to care about it. And the reason why I share that with the staff is I think it's easy to, if somebody does have feedback, so we make a lot of flavors and some of them are better than others. And when somebody does have feedback, it's easy for them to think like, oh, this is part of this company, and the culinary people that are making this are just smarter than the customer. When in reality, like, we need that feedback all the time. So at different points over the last 10 years, probably nearly all of them have been an issue. To begin with, I don't feel like we were probably charging enough. And that's something, like, raising a price is a emotional process. And you have to believe it in order to do it. You have to believe that it's worth it. So I think in the beginning we were charging too little. And then I think on the finance side, we weren't doing anything like negligent, but we didn't have much of a plan when we started. I can remember a conversation when we were buying fruit, when my brother was considering joining or not, just going through how many pops we would have to sell. And that was really just like for us to pay rent. And then we just stopped at winter and didn't consider the next year. And that was a little bit of maybe us just being unsure what we were on as a business, whether we were on like a fad or whether we were starting like something that was going to stick around. So we definitely didn't have a good financial process set up. And I wish our record keeping, in addition to like making sure your cash position is good and that you're profitable when you're selling things, also a lot of those records just for like historical sales to make a better plan on, we just didn't have in an organized enough way. One that we didn't really do, another one that sticks out that's now super important to us, is vision. And I don't know if that was a problem. I don't know what we would have done differently, because I don't think I could have necessarily imagined the vision that we developed 3 or 4 years later that we're now kind of pursuing. But we definitely didn't have one, and it's something I believe in. So that is kind of a weird dichotomy in my mind right now. I'm not sure if I think we should have had one, because like we said, wholesale was not a part of our vision. Is Would we be better off if we had not been distracted by that opportunity and had focused on one channel? Maybe so. I have two older brothers. One of them is now my business partner. The other is an anthropologist. And we would visit him pretty much every summer. I would, at least, visited him in Panama and Ecuador and Mexico. And for some reason, Latin desserts, and the paleta in particular, like, caught our eye, which is an interesting thing for some guys in their early 20s. And we just started thinking about first just pursuing the product, because there's such a diversity of quality, but also just ingredients and these pretty cool small entrepreneurs that were doing cool things. And then the trips kind of turned from exploratory just as a passion to more like studying for a business. Even though the business wasn't going to exist, it was just a fun like thing to have beers and talk about. And then that eventually, for me, like, I got laid off from my job, and these ideas that we had just kind of in disorganized notebooks, and just this idea about just felt like the right time to give it a shot. And I very much remember thinking, like, if insurance isn't a sure thing, there are no sure things. So you might as well have control over that, for better or for worse. We're still in the same business today. We've added a lot of wrinkles and different ways of selling pops, but some of the same flavors that we made year one are our best sellers today. And I think once we got started, though, we realized, maybe not the first year, but by the second year, that in order for the brand to be something memorable, it needed to be about more than the product, and about the feeling that the people got purchasing the product or being around the product or getting the product. So the things that we associate with a brand, whether it's us hosting an event or um, helping to introduce people to different nonprofits or causes around their community, opportunities to get involved in the community. I think those things are ultimately what led to our success, beyond like a culinary masterpiece, which is maybe different than a lot of other food brands, and probably not ever, it's probably never like completely one or the other. Like, the product has to be great, and we have a ton of fun and a ton of resources going into making sure that it's great. But there's something about what I think we've realized is that our company purpose, creating unexpected moments of happiness, is like hokey and hard to say the first few times. And then after you say it enough times and believe it and see the power of it, you realize that not only is it good just for the soul and for getting to impact people positively, but it's good for the business as well. Starting out, like I said, I think my mentors were the people right around me. I had one good friend that was opening a bar at the same time, and I consider him a mentor now. I think we just like talking about ideas. Fairly quickly, though, I fell in love with a brand called Zingerman's, and they have a training course called Zing Train. And we went up there in 2013, and I've really looked up to Ari and Maggie as leaders there, and they've been both knowingly and unknowingly mentors to me over the years as well. I think the closest thing I can think of for being trapped in the nightmare, God, it's almost like the things you look back upon most fondly. But when you're making pops the way that we were in the beginning, we had a popsicle maker that was about the size of like a washing machine. It could freeze 88 pops at a time. We handbagged them. Our kitchen was like very hot, so we would go sit in the freezer to bag the pops so they wouldn't melt while they were doing it. And obviously, you're trying to sell as much as you can, so we would have these large sales that we'd commit to on the spot, and then come home and be like, okay, we've got 19 hours to make 1,200 pops. Our machine makes 88 in 50 minutes, we literally have to have somebody doing this for the next however many hours. So I think there were definitely times of the monotony of like putting sticks in the stick maker or sealing the pops where you're just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Then again, like that is, like I said, that's also the time that like the people that I was working with at that time that I still talk to today, and some that are still working here, like that's the good old days. Like, oh man, what would we do to not have to be glued to our email and just get to go make a fun new flavor for somebody without having to like charge them an R&D fee and figure out the how many whatever it's going to cost, since it's going to cost them extra if they add this ingredient. So I think there's that piece in the very early days for sure, that it's good and bad. Yeah. Yeah, the business definitely feels like established in a sense that it's going to exist next year. I think I've got a healthy fear that if we don't continue to improve it, um, that might not be forever the case. Um, so I feel like that feels nice. It's hard to, and I know that I can remember you have a lot of time to think when you sell pops because you're mainly just sitting by yourself at a popsicle carton. I can remember sitting there thinking like the idea of selling like a million of something, and that just seemed so unattainable. And wow, wouldn't that be amazing if we would? And now we sell, I mean, we're not McDonald's or anything, but we sell 3 million, 3 million pops a year. And that's like a good feeling, but it's just the way humans work. It's hard for us to appreciate things. I think we just reset our bars very, very quickly as to what the normal is. So I do try my best to appreciate that. We've also realized that the things that we're most proud of aren't really the sales metrics or recognition of like best dessert in the South or something like that. It's the individual moments, whether it's like somebody saying, I got engaged to my wife when we had your pops. Now it's our 15th anniversary and we wanted to do this special party. Can you be a part of it? Or we've got like we have a yoga event and 800 people come out to it, and we both hear from people and just know, just that's a feeling of just being proud of adding something positive kind of to the texture of our world. So I think those are the moments that when you're in them feel really, really living the dream. The sales piece, we're not on like hockey stick growth, we're on like a steady growth. So each year it's like, no, that was good, but we can do better. I don't think we ever like look back and be like, oh my gosh, we've arrived. So. Yeah, the piece of advice that I've been kind of trying to figure out how to put the most easily digestible words around is that you can start a business for something that you love. So let's say in my example, I loved the idea of making pops. But if I didn't also quickly start loving selling pops or creating a culture or the other pieces of the business, we wouldn't have been successful. So I think that's sometimes important for people to either know that they either need to realize that the piece that they love will probably be the vast minority of the time you spend on it. Or if your skill is like so valuable and you're so good at it that you could bring on somebody else to handle that stuff, then maybe you could make that work. But in general, for small business, I think you have to almost love being an entrepreneur more than any specific product or service or activity